create um, a a grid, if you will, where people would be put on different grade levels based on their responsibility and uh, what their job entails and so forth, so that we could properly locate people on a scale, if you will. So I think we have. Is, is it Kathy? Are you here with us?
Yes, I am.
Oh, both of you, Kathy and Lisa? Yeah. And I gather that Kathy has done tremendous amount of legwork to get us to the point where we are. And so perhaps you could just bring us up to date on what's transpired and what you have found. And she and I had a conversation about some of the difficulties when there are not too many comparable positions. A tax clerk is a tax clerk, I mean, a tax collector, but some of the other positions are a little more specialized, so that's challenging. So, Kathy, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, you ready for us to start, Tim? All right. So first of all, thank you for having us tonight. We're looking forward to sharing the results of our project with you. We engaged with Old Lyme at the end of last year to review and update job descriptions, as Tim had said, and also to do some benchmarking for compensation to ensure equity with the external market. So we have a short presentation. I'll go through the agenda and then we can have Q&A at the end. I do want to introduce us just a little bit more. My name is Lisa Pollock. I'm the Vice President, Chief Human Resource Officer at the Human Resources Consulting Group. We're going to talk about our organization in a second and what we do. And with me tonight is Kathy Diana, who, as Tim said, did all of the research, and I will let her introduce herself.
Good evening, all. As Lisa said, I'm Kathy Diana. I have pretty much 20 over years of experience in municipalities, and now obviously more experience in private sector and still immersed in public sector. So it was my pleasure to partake in this project. To me, this is kind of all second nature. So it's just knowing where to go and how to find the data and pretty much getting it out there to you folks. So again, thank you for offering this project to us.
All right, thank you, Kathy. I am going to share my screen for the short PowerPoint presentation. You may get a glimpse of my new grandson as I try to share my screen, so we'll see. Maybe not. Share that. Oh,
There he is.
Ah.
Sorry. All right, now you should be seeing the job description compensation analysis page. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, great. So our agenda for tonight includes an introduction of HRCG, the objectives of the study. We're going to go through the scope of the project. We want to talk a little bit about our methodology and how we got to where we are. Some observations that we found along the way, our findings, and some of the challenges that we also found along the way. And we would like to give you the opportunity to ask us whatever questions you may have at the end of the presentation. So the Human Resources Consulting Group, I think it's just important for you to know who we are and why we were selected for the project. We are a outsourced HR and payroll company. We have a very experienced team. We've been in business for 34 years. We provide a centralized custom support for small and mid-sized companies across all different industries, including municipalities, nonprofits, finance organizations. We work with the zoo, and we do have clients all over the United States, from Maine to California to the Pacific Northwest. We have a lot in Connecticut, of course, because that's where we're based, in Seymour, Connecticut, not too far from you guys. We provide a high-touch service model, and we do have a reputation for outstanding performance. We're not looking to build client lists. We want to have a group of clients that we can partner with. We feel we're a partner, not a vendor. Our team is staffed with HR professionals. They have a strong expertise. Most of them either have a master's degree or they have what's called an SPHR, which is the Senior Professional of Human Resources. My team comes from all different industries, and again, including municipalities. And we provide a neutral, objective, third-party function to our clients. Again, quickly, not spend long on this, but you can see we've worked with a lot of municipalities in the past throughout Connecticut and also in other states, including California. So I'm going to start with the objectives of the study, and very quickly I'm going to move this over to Kathy. So we were engaged to look at the job descriptions and also to benchmark the positions. So you want to look at your job descriptions every 2 to 4 years. You want to make sure they're accurate. The job description is used to clarify expectations for your employees. It helps you recruit the right people. And making sure they have the knowledge, skills, and abilities to do the job. They assist with any interactive process that you may engage with the Americans with Disabilities Act claim. And they're also used to determine appropriate compensation. So we started with the job descriptions, and then we moved on to the compensation part of it. So the objectives were to review and update job descriptions to make sure they were accurate, to benchmark against other organizations, and we really tried to use like municipalities. And also we wanted to, the town wanted to make sure that the employees had an active participation in the process. So the scope of the project included all the positions at Town Hall. The job descriptions we were looking at for essential functions and minimum qualifications. Benchmarking again, using the CCM database and also union contracts. Kathy will talk a little bit more about that. And again, the town hall employees participated in informational meetings and data gathering meetings with Kathy. And they reviewed and discussed their current positions and their job responsibilities to make sure what they're actually doing matches the job description. And now I am going to turn it over to Kathy to talk about methodology.
Lisa, could I interrupt just for a sec?
Absolutely.
Did you find much discrepancy, or were the job descriptions require a lot of updating from the old?
Most of them were on par. There were a few minor tweaks, and then I had others that had big changes. And obviously we did those changes, and then there were also there was a new position. There were a couple of positions that you didn't have previous job descriptions for, so those were created as well. But on the whole, I would say probably 2/3 were, again, minor tweaks and updates, either in the essential functions or the physical requirements, the ADA requirements, job environment. What I could tell you is I added in, I want to say all of them, or at least 99%, ability to stare at a computer screen, because there was no mention of that. And today, obviously, we are all glued to computer screens. So that was, in my opinion, essential to be on there. But for the most part, about 1/3 really needed a lot of work, a lot of changes.
Thank you. All right, Kathy, you're up.
Okay. So back to job
Kathy,
description.
I don't know if I'm the only one having trouble hearing you as opposed to Lisa, but could you move more forward? That'd be
I'm
great.
moving her forward. She's
I'm moving
shy.
to the front of the class. Okay. Is that better?
Very good.
Good. Okay. So getting back to the job descriptions, I spent probably an hour with each employee that I spoke with. In a couple of cases, I had follow-up phone calls. So 26 employees, in addition to doing 28 job descriptions. So again, the extra job descriptions were new or you did not have on file. But for the most part, I spoke with everyone in your town hall, and I must say it was a pleasure speaking with everyone. Everyone was really, really nice, and very helpful and in-depth in our conversations. The drafts were completed. They were forwarded to the first selectman's office for review and approval. The compensation piece. So to try and capture everything as accurately as possible. I spent a lot of time in your CCM database, which is the database statewide for Conference of Connecticut Conference of Municipalities. And so all municipalities obviously share their data, share their information, and it's housed in this database for purposes just as this. In some cases, I was not able to get data. It was either left blank, or perhaps the weekly hours were not listed, so there was no way to equalize that data. That led me to search for union contracts, and that is what I did. The towns that we utilized in the study, which are all in your neck of the woods, were Clinton, East Haddam, Essex, Killingworth, Old Saybrook, and Westbrook. So when I selected these towns, obviously they were based on a few different areas, like the population may be off a little bit. They were all pretty much in your, vicinity. Per capita income and 20 to 21 grand list. All those components were taken into consideration. So I'm going to say, you look at the population, it might be higher in one area, lower in another. But on the whole is really how you have to look at the data. It's not just black and white. Again, due to some positions we were not able to find data, I included another search and went to Chester, Deep River, Durham, and North Stonington. Again, trying to stay in your general vicinity. That's really where this portion was taken into consideration more so than anything else. Population, obviously, and an area. Observations on the whole, obviously your town hall is non-union. High degree of longevity, probably more than 2/3 of your staff have been there for quite a long time. To me, your employees know their job well and are comfortable in their positions. And I found that they all appear to be very dedicated to their jobs. My understanding is that Town of Oline does not practice performance evaluations nor merit increases, which are usually tied obviously to performance evaluations. It appears that there is a standard cost of living every July, new fiscal year, anywhere from maybe 2.75%, 2%, 2.5%, depending obviously on your budget for that particular year. And last but not least, as far as all municipalities, we've always done it this way. And so there's adverse to change, adverse to moving forward, a comfort level in staying where you are. And it's very common, as I said, in municipalities, but it is something that you want to try to steer away from. Some of the challenges. So inconsistency with job titles, that was more specific, I'm going to say, to the two positions in Tim's office. And in researching my data on the whole, mostly for first selectman, a mayor's office, a councilman's office, it was always assistant to, secretary of, executive assistant. You could kind of gather the title of positions. Office manager and senior manager of administration are the positions in Tim's office. And so it was trying to get a fair comparison of those types of positions and what similar positions in other municipalities were paying. So there was a lot of research there, really I across the board, just to make sure that I was on target and not overestimating the salaries that I was looking at. In some cases, few of your folks have stipends, your registrar of voters, your fire marshal or emergency management director. I think I'm forgetting one.
Put a slide on it.
Okay, but in looking in the database, it was hard to know if this $8,000 I'm looking at for an emergency director was, because it was part-time, or was this a stipend? Without any indication, I didn't want to just assume, because that would have skewed your data. So in some cases, I wasn't able to use it. In fact, I think in most cases, I was not able to use it unless it was specific. With the comparison towns, going through the CCM database, the only town I was not able to find, which at the time I did this research, Clinton, had not entered their data. And that forced me to go to their website and look at their union contracts, which forced me then to go back to the other towns and look for their union contracts. And what I could share with you is, I mean, they are obviously on their websites. And it does seem, at least in group number one, our first comparison, it seems like Old Lyme is the only town that is a non-union for town hall. Killingworth, I was not able to find a contract other than their BOE, so that wasn't going to do me any good. But it's interesting that your surrounding municipalities are all unionized for town hall employees. So I'm saying that because you probably should, also keep that in mind, because that will dictate what the salaries are in a municipality, as I'm sure you well know. And I will tell you, they're all about 2.5, 2.75%. So kind of even across the board, which is probably what you hadn't expected. Again, insufficient comparable data, as I just indicated.
Right. And we had to equalize the data. So we started with annualized salaries, but quickly learned that there wasn't really a standard for the number of weekly hours worked. So we had to go and find the weekly hours so that we could equalize the data and bring it down to an hourly rate, which is the only real equity part of it. That's how you do it to keep it equitable. So we're going to move into the spreadsheet, and we can field questions before we get into the data. If anybody has a question now, if not, we will move into the spreadsheet part of it, which shows you our actual analysis.
So a question on the unionization, right? So Essex and Lyme are unionized or no?
Old Lyme is not, obviously. Lyme I did not consider because they were off, if I recall, on the population. But what I could tell you is Essex, Clinton, East Haddam, Old Saybrook, and Westbrook all have union contracts. The only one I wasn't. I'm sorry?
Right. So Salem, Lyme, you didn't consider Lyme, right?
Did not.
Salem.
No.
Yep. East Haddam or no?
Yes.
Did you consider East
yes.
Haddam?
Yes.
And they're unionized?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Saybrook.
Yes, Old Saybrook.
Yeah, Saybrook. If you're an employee of one, you're unionized over in Saybrook. So.
All right. So if technology works right, when I click on this little Excel spreadsheet, we're going to have an Excel spreadsheet to look at. All right, no problem. It opened on the other screen. Drag it over.
Aha.
So can you confirm you're looking at a spreadsheet right now?
It's cut off at the bottom, but
Yes, so it will not fit on one slide. So what we're going to do is we're going to scroll and then we'll show you some of the data. So Kathy already talked. Oh.
Is it possible to make the center of it and larger?
I can definitely go larger. Hang on.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah.
Are you off? You're off to the side though, right?
Yeah, correct.
Well, why don't you, as you make your points, just we can direct you to the numbers that we need to see if they're not available. How about that?
Let me do this. How's that?
It's good.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So as Kathy had mentioned earlier, we looked at population per capita income. We looked at the grand list and the population of the different towns so that we could try to get as close to Old Lyme as we could. And then I'm going to let Kathy dive in and explain what you're seeing on the screen there. Go ahead, Kath.
Thank you.
You can slide up.
So as Lisa indicated, we needed to equalize the data so that everyone was under an hourly rate of pay. What I can share with you is, I mean, obviously Old Lyme works predominantly a weekly schedule of 30 hours. Old Saybrook is 40, and then in the mix you had 35, you had 32 and a half, you had 37 and a half. So what you're looking at is the most accurate information that we could come up with based on the information that I had. And as you could see, I mean, obviously they're all kind of close. You have to keep in mind, you know, that while employees may feel that they're underpaid, Old Lyme's schedule is 30 hours a week versus, for instance, Old Saybrook's schedule, which is 40 hours a week. So of course, that's going to skew the end result, the bottom line of what your folks are taking home. It seemed, I think as Tim had mentioned, or someone had just mentioned, you know, you're a tax collector, building official, finance director, those positions are easy to find. I want to say across the board that data was in the database. It was the positions that are color coded that were a little bit difficult to find and to make sure that it was equal across the board. So for instance, I'll go right to animal control officer. The fact that that position is only 26 hours a week skews the salary, the weekly salary. It does appear that the individual, the incumbent, is a little bit underpaid, but they are only working 26 hours a week. So in some cases, as I explained to Tim, it's not so much that the hourly rate of pay may be off. It's that you would want to increase their hourly or their weekly schedule so that it's more in line with the work that they're doing and the ability to get that work done.
So what you see over on the compa ratio is we've highlighted in, I'd like to call it red, but it's really sort of pink, salmon color. We've highlighted anybody that is below 100% of the average. So for ease of viewing the data, you can see that administrative assistant, assessor, fire marshal, office manager, they're below the average. And then you certainly have positions that are above the average. And I'm going to scroll down. Oh, we can go back.
Yeah. I was just going to ask if you can scroll down.
So there are more positions below. So here's our first grouping of positions, and then we can scroll down and pick up the rest of them. And you have more, certainly Parks and Rec, or not Parks and Rec, office manager, payroll administrator, senior center admin, senior manager administration, tax clerk, tax collector, and your transfer station supervisor. Some of them are very close. Some of them are not as close as.
Yeah, so 98% don't really care about, right?
Right.
81% care about, right? 92 on the edge. So let's talk about that, you know, that sort of thing. So this is great. It's very helpful.
One thing you can look at the transfer station, there's only one comparable, but I think when you did your extra work, you discovered some additional towns beyond what shows on this chart.
Yes, Tim, we have that data, so we can go right to that. I just want to explain. Anybody in blue, that's a hyperlink, right? So we'll start with the transfer station because that's where we were, right here. So we're going to click on transfer station supervisor, and it's going to bring up another town, which is North Stonington, as a comparable.
Okay.
So what you also need to understand with this particular position, which was really difficult to find another similar position, the transfer station operator or supervisor, if you will, is a position in and of itself. What I came across mostly was road foreman, highway person, deputy public works director. It really, of all the contracts that I looked at in all the municipalities and in the database as well, there was little data for that specific transfer station position. So I was kind of happy that I, kind of stumbled on the North Stonington. And again, I think that puts it into perspective, that your transfer station supervisor in Oline is a little bit below where he should be, especially that he's a supervisor and not an operator.
And then what we do here is we just click O-line comp analysis. It brings us back to the top. And would you like to go through each of the highlighted positions that have more data?
One question I would have, obviously, longevity could have something to do with these rates. And we do have employees who have been with us a long time, but there could be a disparity, I would think, either way for that reason.
Yes,
Well,
and
Yes.
That was taken into account with the comparables from the other town, if that was possible to find out that information.
right. So you know what I suggest? We're gonna go to our summary of findings, and then we can come back to the spreadsheet, maybe. So I skipped it. No, I closed it. Okay, and then we're gonna go to the summary of findings, because we did find that there could be reasons why those are like that. So I'll let Kathy take it.
So again, recapping on the job descriptions, the majority of the job descriptions were accurate for essential functions. We tweaked some, we spent a lot more time on others. Again, probably 2/3 had some minor changes across the board. That other third, we did some major changes, and that also included the physical requirements and the ADA requirements as well. Salaries are generally competitive with surrounding external market. And again, what you need to take into consideration, and I guess more importantly, what your folks need to take into consideration, is you have a 30-hour work week versus surrounding towns that have 35, 37, 40. That's going to make the difference. If you look at, the end result, of course, it's going to be higher. It's not to say that, they're not deserving of getting some type of increase. It's just rationalizing the data as it is. Pay inequity may exist between similar positions, but additional data would be needed. So there were a couple of the technician positions, two in, I believe it was inland wetland zoning, were of the same salary, where there was one, I think it was the assessor's office, if I recall correctly, that was a little bit lower. And that could be because, years of service, tenure in that position, quite possibly education level. What I think I came across was that a lot of your folks at least had an associate's degree. Many of them at least did. So there was some type of formal education. What you would want to consider is the potential to increase your weekly hours a little bit more than what they currently are. And obviously in moving forward for your replacements, that's really the time that you're probably going to really have to make some major changes, because if somebody's retiring and now your open position needs to be filled, what is your candidate pool going to look like at that lower level position? So these are thoughts moving forward. Right now, it didn't seem like anybody was on their way out, but again, it's food for thought in filling these positions as people end up leaving.
Right.
I guess one question is, if you've surveyed a whole bunch of towns, and we all know municipalities, people definitely stay around for a long time. So you got somebody who's been there for 25 years. So your survey may be appropriate for an older demographic that's been around for a long time, such that if you have somebody, let's say a land use consultant or what is a good example, generally younger folks, so they're 26 years old and they've got, you know, good education and all that stuff. But if we're basing our findings on folks who've got 20 years of experience, you know, that's something that we need to consider, or at least be footnoted, if you will, right? So
Correct.
there's two points to this survey. One is, are we being fair to employees, or, and the other side of the coin is, are employees asking for too much? You know, so that's another thing. And it seems like we're pretty much at equilibrium there. But if we had to replace somebody who's been here for 20 years, which we do on a regular basis, 25, 30 years, right? If we were to use a salary survey that had a fixed number as opposed to a range, that would be a disaster for us, because we would be paying somebody who has, you know, 5 years of experience compared to 30 years of experience that we based our survey on. And so I'm just asking whether that's been considered when we go through this analysis.
Yeah,
That's
so
it.
I would just chime in that we've had conversations with Tim and Michelle about the next step, which is what you're talking about, I believe, are the salary ranges, right? So we would, there's a possibility to build salary ranges where you would know that your senior people are going to be at the higher end of the range, and your more junior people that you're bringing in are still within the range of what you want to
Yep.
pay, but on the lower end.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yep.
I have a question too for these, the municipalities that have unions. Did you happen to check any of the contracts to see if there are any type of long-term where they get a bonus?
Longevity?
Longevity.
Longevity
Yes,
payments,
I
yes.
did. I absolutely checked the contracts. In fact, I have copies of at least the salary schedules right here with me.
So
Yes,
was that included in your hourly wage, or
No.
would,
No,
okay,
it was not.
so those people would be getting paid more even than what they are seen on the
Potentially,
salary scales?
yes. Yes, and what I could also say, what I found was, in some cases, if they had some type of certification for their position, they were awarded additional money. So none of those extras were included. This was the bottom line hourly rate of pay. That I
I
could
think in our case, we have a 6-step system for new employees. They may not start at the first step, but a 6-step. So you move up 1 step each year for 6 years, and then you're a top step. After that, you're pretty much getting only the cost of living.
Correct.
So longevity, you're just kind of swimming along with the tide with inflation and so forth. You're not really moving smartly ahead unless you switch positions somehow. So
Exactly.
despite the fact that we have some senior people, they're not getting step increases anymore, and they're more or less getting inflationary increases.
And going back to a point that was made already by Lisa and Kathy, our employees work 30 hours a week and are paid for 30 hours a week. So that new person in their 20s coming in, the hourly rate may be fine, but they're only getting paid 30 hours a week. They may not be able to live on that.
That's
And
right.
they may need the 35 or 40 that other towns are willing to pay and get that extra 5 to 10 hours a week of work out of them, and they're more productive. So I think that's certainly, I think, is going to be a factor with attracting people to come to work for the town, even though, yeah, 30 hours sounds great, but it's predominantly, I assume it's 5 days a week, 6 hours a day. I don't know if there are any people that do their 30 hours in 3 or 4 days. I know I do at least 30 hours in 2 or 3 days. So, that could be a challenge, again, replacing our current workforce. Many of them may love the 30 hours a week.
Did you say that basically if our employees are working 30 hours a week, but it's an hour for lunch, correct, Tim?
Yeah, so it's 9 to 4 with an hour for lunch.
And
There are some people who have odd arrangements beyond that, but that's the standard deal.
okay, so I don't know if that's the same across the board in other towns.
In most cases, it is, and the hours of work are explained in the union contracts as well. So whether it was half an hour or the full hour, that absolutely is included.
So my question is, did you want to go back to the data? Are we concluding? We have more questions? We're here to explain whatever you need us to explain.
I think we have a salary committee, so as opposed to discussing certain positions in detail, maybe the salary committee would be more focused on specific things.
Okay, understand?
Don't you think?
I agree, Tim. This is Dave. I think that as described, I'm comfortable with the work that you guys did. Thank you very much for that. It's a great base for us understanding whether overpaying or underpaying, as the case may be. And I think it's the right first step for us. And then, ranges are important, as I brought up, and so we can think about, the scope of additional work that could be collectively requested of you guys going forward.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Other questions?
It seems like there are a number of towns which do have 30-hour weeks, right?
There were some, I'm not going to say that there weren't. I don't think they were really specific to the towns that I selected for the study, but across the board, yes, absolutely. Like your smaller town, really. Smaller towns statewide, in some cases may have 30, depending on what the position is, of course.
Another thing that you might not think of is that Lyme doubles in size or even more than doubles come the summertime. So
I did take that into consideration, Tim. I will tell you, I absolutely did.
yeah,
And I will tell you, many of your employees share that with me as well. But you have to think about this. The towns that I used were along the shoreline also. So the same would apply to them, which kind of equalized it. So I couldn't really put much weight at that point into the additional 2,000 residents that you have in the summer months.
and did you get a sense from talking with the staff that many of them thought that 30 hours was too few for them to get what they have to do done?
Not so much the 30, but the 12 hours, the 10 hours, the under 20-hour folks. Those
Part-timers?
absolutely. They just couldn't get all the work done. They wished that they had more hours to accommodate the residents that live in the town.
Are you saying the people who are work, quote, part-time?
Very part-time, yes.
Other questions from the group?
I'm
I
good.
think that one of the things that we have to take into consideration too is that we have to look at what some of these people, who they serve. because our population, a third of our population are senior citizens, and 60 and above. And when you think about social services or senior center people, they're serving a third of the population, and they're doing, social services, I think, is a 12-hour-a-week job. And that there's a lot of work to be done for our seniors, especially those that are homebound and cannot get to town hall and don't have access to a computer to pull off or print out a form that they need to fill out for services.
Exactly. Exactly. Further questions?
Well, I think you've enlightened us a good deal, and this is a good first step. Thank you, thank you.
You're very
Thank
welcome.
you. We really
Thank you
enjoyed.
very much.
Long
Yeah.
overdue.
All right. Are we dropping? We closing?
I think it's that time. It's going to
All right.
become the children's hour pretty soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you so much. We appreciate you working with us. We look forward to additional projects in this area.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Very
Bye.
good.
Enjoy your evening.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.